Welcome to Stress and Heal. Take a deep breath and let the noise fade away. It's time for a quiet story, just for you. Hey guys, tonight we slip into golden sandals and tiptoe through the candlelit halls of ancient Alexandria, where the marble floors are still warm from the day's sun and papyrus rustles like secrets in the air. You're headed somewhere sacred, Queen Cleopatra's bedroom. Yup, that Cleopatra. You probably won't survive this level of glam. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Once upon a time, in the heart of Egypt's most cosmopolitan city, a queen ruled not just by crown, but by charisma. Cleopatra VII Philopator, descendant of Ptolemies, speaker of a dozen languages, reader of medical scrolls and love poems, and wearer of absolutely unfair eyeliner, was winding down for the evening. And you were somehow invited. You walk through the corridors of her palace, past carved columns depicting gods with falcon heads and ibis beaks. The air is sweet, thick with blue lotus and frankincense. Servants in crisp linen nod as you pass. The entire building is hushed, the kind of hush you can feel on your skin. Cleopatra doesn't just sleep, she transitions, like the moon setting into the Nile. Her bedchamber is a dream stitched in ivory and gold, layered with cushions dyed in indigo and crimson. But don't get ahead of yourself. She's not in bed yet. She's still outside, standing on a mosaic balcony as the last streaks of sun melt into the desert. She greets you with a knowing smile. Her black hair glints with a dusting of crushed hematite. On her wrists, gold snakes coil lazily, their eyes tiny chips of emerald. Come, she says, motioning toward the shadows behind her. The night begins now. Every day, Cleopatra commands generals, reads state letters, negotiates with Rome. But each night, she returns to herself, to something softer, stranger, older than diplomacy. You follow her into a circular room with open ceilings. Stars blink above, framed by pale limestone walls. It smells like sandalwood and ancient roses. Soft music plays, not from instruments, but from a glass harp played with moistened fingers. Is that ASMR in 30 BC? A servant places a stool behind Cleopatra. She sits, leans back slightly, and two handmaidens begin brushing her hair. 100 strokes. No more, no less. This is how the queen resets her crown. A historian once claimed her beauty was in the ritual, not the features. Maybe that's true. Maybe Cleopatra's power wasn't in how she looked, but in how she made you watch. Every movement is precise, deliberate, as if rehearsed in front of gods. You glance up. There's a mural of Isis above the doorway, smiling in profile. Now, don't move too quickly, but there's a cat watching you from the shadows. Yep, that's Tamu, Cleopatra's temple-trained feline. Rumor has it, Tamu once stared down a Roman emissary until he coughed up the truth. Scholars still argue whether Tamu was simply a cat or a divine reincarnation of Bastet herself. Honestly, same energy. A delicate cloth is draped over Cleopatra's shoulders. The handmaidens begin anointing her skin, drop by drop, with oil made from blue lotus, myrrh, and something called nard. It's the scent of dreams and forgotten lovers. You can practically feel the stress evaporate from her collarbones. She stretches her arms and a subtle yawn escapes her, more feline than royal. Do you know, she murmurs, that I keep 12 different sleep oils and only use them by moon phase? Her voice is low, a little amused. Tonight is a waxing gibbous, for strength. You resist the urge to Google what a gibbous moon is. Just kidding, there's no Wi-Fi. You'll have to ask the stars. Back in the corridor, a servant carries in a small obsidian tray. On it, a tiny jar of greenish cream. Cleopatra dips a slender finger inside and pats the cool substance under her eyes. Crocodile dung and rosewater, she says, catching your shocked look. Don't knock it till you try it. True fact, some ancient Egyptian eye treatments did involve crocodile excrement, though usually dried and mixed with clay or vinegar. Believe it or not, some of those concoctions had antibacterial properties. Imagine explaining that to your dermatologist. She stands and lets the robe slip from her shoulders. Another servant approaches with a robe made of impossibly fine linen. It's nearly translucent and embroidered with gold thread in the shape of papyrus flowers. You catch your breath, half from awe, half because someone just lit a brazier of incense that smells like heaven's own closet. Cleopatra looks at you and says softly, "Most people believe power is in war, but it's also in sleep." She walks slowly toward a wall painted with blue lotuses. The painting opens, a secret door. You follow, trying not to trip on your own fascination. Behind that door, her private bath. Not just for cleanliness, but for dreaming. And as the door closes behind you, the air shifts again. It's warmer, wetter, kissed by steam. Something's about to happen. Something more intimate than power, more mysterious than beauty. But we're not there yet. For now, she turns to you, her skin glowing from oil, hair cascading like a dark river, and whispers, "Would you like to see how a queen truly prepares for sleep?" You nod, and she smiles like the Sphinx, ancient, patient, slightly amused by your awe. You trail behind her like a reverent breeze, padding barefoot across smooth alabaster tiles into the bath chamber. There's no ceiling, just the velvet Egyptian sky above, full of stars that flicker like gossiping courtiers. A single moonbeam falls across a sunken pool of water that ripples as if it's breathing. This is no ordinary bath. Cleopatra's bath is legendary, whispered about in Roman villas, scribbled in scrolls by jealous poets, and still mimicked in high end spas 2,000 years later. But you're not here for some commercial version with spa music and cucumber slices. You're here for the real thing. Every day, Cleopatra ends her evenings in this place of vapor and silence. But first, oils. She leads you to a long, narrow table covered in tiny glass bottles. They glint like fireflies, each filled with strange mixtures: gold dusted frankincense oil, black seed essence, and one with an ominous deep red hue labeled simply Typhon. You wisely don't ask. She reaches for a jar and unscrews the lid with care. The scent that emerges? Jasmine, rich and heady. For the mind, she says, dabbing a touch on her temples. The Romans think sleep comes from wine. Fools. Sleep comes from scent. She gestures for you to sit, and a handmaiden brings over a bowl of warm water scented with hibiscus. She dips a cloth and begins wiping Cleopatra's feet, slow and reverent, as if cleansing the day's empire from her skin. You look away, because something about that intimacy feels holy. Then comes the jewelry. Yes, for sleep. Not for style, not for war, but for protection. She slips a golden ring shaped like a coiled cobra onto her index finger. To keep away those who enter dreams uninvited, she explains. A scarab pendant follows, then a delicate ankle bracelet carved from lapis lazuli. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra believed in magic or simply used it to control belief. But as she lifts a silver mirror to inspect her reflection, you can't help but wonder if both can be true. She looks into the mirror like it owes her answers. "Do you know why the mirror is sacred?" she asks, not waiting for a reply. "Because it reflects not just beauty, but intention." You blink. Yeah, you're going to need to write that one down later. A gentle bell rings in the corner. That's the signal. The milk has been poured. Two servants step forward and help her disrobe once more. You're careful to stare only at the water. Cleopatra walks slowly into the bath, steam curling around her ankles. The scent of milk and honey fills the air, warm and slightly sweet, like a dessert made by moonlight. Legend says Cleopatra bathed in donkey milk. Is it true? Honestly, maybe. The lactic acid in milk does exfoliate. But what they don't tell you is that it's not just donkey milk. Tonight's bath also contains crushed pearls, sea salt from the Red Sea, and a few drops of something bitter she doesn't explain. For dreams, she says vaguely. She sinks in, water lapping at her collarbones, her hair fanned behind her like spilled ink. "Tell me," she murmurs, "what does the modern world do to sleep?" You hesitate. Mentioning caffeine, blue light, or doom-scrolling TikTok feels almost blasphemous here. "Exactly," she smirks, as if you answered anyway. "We bathe the body but neglect the mind, and then we wonder why it won't rest." You sit back and listen to the tiny sounds, the water's echo against stone, the hiss of burning resin, the occasional purring of Tamu the cat as she rubs her face on a basket of towels. This bath isn't rushed. Cleopatra doesn't believe in rushing anything, except maybe political marriages. She reaches for a pot beside her and lifts the lid. The smell hits you first. Warm honey, crushed almonds, a hint of cedar. It's her night mask. Homemade, of course. She smears a thin layer over her cheeks and chin with a carved ivory spatula. "To remind the skin that time is just a suggestion," she says with a wink. You try not to laugh, but she notices. "You think queens aren't vain?" she teases. Even gods admire their own reflections. And just like that, the bath becomes silence again. She closes her eyes and leans back. You watch as the steam softens the lines around her mouth, blurs the sharpness of her jaw. She's not a statue, not a seductress or a symbol. She's just a woman, tired from ruling, trying to reset the world one pore at a time. A shooting star streaks across the night sky above her. You almost tell her, but no, this is her moment. And yet, even in this softness, she isn't defenseless. One servant lays fresh reeds across the floor, murmuring something under her breath. Protective words. Another places small amulets around the bath's rim, an ankh, a feather, an eye. You notice they're spaced evenly like some geometric spell. Each direction must be acknowledged, Cleopatra explains. Even in rest, we're watched. Is she joking? Possibly. Probably not. She opens one eye and says, "The Greeks call it superstition. We call it knowing." You nod. As one does when the Queen of Egypt drops metaphysical mic moments. Eventually, the honey mask is rinsed with rose water. Her arms are dried with a cloth embroidered with sacred beetles. And just when you think the ritual is complete, she holds up a single strand of black thread. She braids it into a tiny lock of her hair near the nape of her neck. To bind the day to itself, she says simply. No explanation, just a knot in time. A servant brings her robe again, this one darker, embroidered with silver fish and constellations. She stands, her skin aglow with oil and steam, and steps out of the bath as if emerging from another life. The moon is high now. Somewhere in the distance, a flute begins to play. You follow her back toward the bedchamber, feet cooled by marble, senses drowsy from scent and silence. And just before she disappears behind the velvet curtain, Cleopatra glances back and says, "Dreams are not escape. They are memory rehearsed." And then she's gone. You follow slowly, lulled by the softness of the night, your body lighter, your senses thick with jasmine and milk. The curtain parts behind her like the Nile at command, revealing Cleopatra's final sanctuary, a room so quiet it might be suspended in time. Every day, she ends here. This is where the world stops speaking and the soul begins to murmur. You tiptoe onto woven rush mats, the floor warm from heat stored during the day. The room smells of blue lotus and sandalwood, both sleepy scents, though no one in the ancient world called them that. You want to collapse onto the silk cushions and drift off instantly, but Cleopatra isn't done. Not even close. She moves toward a long wooden box by the wall, carved with falcons and eyes. From within, she draws out what looks like a thick scroll, but it unrolls into a linen wrap. Inside, a collection of objects laid out with absurd precision. Obsidian stones, a fine-toothed comb, a beeswax candle carved into the shape of Hathor, and a small copper disc darkened by time and oil. Hair before dreams, she says. Always. You sit beside her on a low stool as she dips the comb into warm oil, then runs it slowly through her thick black hair. It hisses slightly, a whisper of moisture and memory. She lets out a breath. People think beauty is armor. They are wrong. It is language. And here comes your first quirky tidbit, the copper disc. She places it carefully in front of her face. It's polished like a mirror, but the reflection is vague, distorted. To remind me that no one sees me clearly at night, she says. So I must decide who I am. A servant enters carrying a tray of dried herbs and a small incense burner. She lights it with the candle of Hathor. The smoke spirals upward, sweet, thick, and oddly spicy. Cleopatra inhales deeply and nods. Sleep needs an anchor, she murmurs, or it drifts too far. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra was deeply spiritual or just knew the psychological power of ritual. After tonight, it seems obvious. She was both. These acts aren't superstition. They're choreography for the brain. You watch her carefully, how she oils her fingertips, then gently taps each of her pressure points, wrists, earlobes, the hollow at her collarbone. Each touch is light, like tuning the body. A servant steps forward with a bowl. Inside, a few small white stones. Cleopatra picks one and holds it up. Calcite, she says, placing it beneath her pillow. For clarity in dreams. She gestures to the bowl. Choose one. You do. It's smooth, cool, maybe moonstone, maybe quartz. You feel foolish holding it, but something about it makes you feel tethered, like you've just given your dream self a flashlight. The final step is silence. She nods to the servant, who extinguishes the incense and the candle at once. The flame dies with a soft pop, leaving the room soaked in shadow and scent. You can still make out Cleopatra's shape, outlined by the light from the stars outside. She lies down on the bed, linen dyed with indigo and stitched with protective glyphs. Even her bedding is symbolic. She pulls a thinner cloth over herself and gestures for you to do the same on a mat nearby. You obey. Resistance is both futile and unnecessary. There is no good night, just quiet. Time stretches. In the dark, she speaks again, her voice barely more than breath. When I sleep, I visit myself. You lie still, trying not to move, not to disturb the moment. The ceiling is invisible, the stars beyond the curtain invisible. Yet you sense them. You sense everything. Then the wind stirs the curtain and something odd happens. The scent shifts. It's no longer sandalwood. It's something older, earthy, wet, like mud after the Nile floods. Cleopatra smiles in the dark. He's coming. You almost sit up. Who? She chuckles softly. My dream tutor. He wears a lion's mask and smells like crocodile musk, says absurd things like don't eat the third eggplant and trust only birds that speak in threes. A pause. I take notes. You blink in the dark. Dream tutors. Lion masks. This woman wins the weird sleep routine Olympics. She shifts slightly, the sheets rustling. One night he said, "You're not Cleopatra. You're just the mirror she uses." I told him I'd have him executed. He laughed. And then I woke up crying. And there it is. The rawness. Beneath all the oils and rituals, the gowns and gold, is someone who wakes up feeling less than whole. Maybe that's why she does all this, to reassemble herself piece by piece each night. She exhales, long and slow. You do too. You've been holding your breath without realizing. Some say sleep is death's rehearsal, she murmurs. But I say sleep is life, reminding you it can begin again. Silence returns. A wind stirs outside, rattling the palm fronds. Somewhere a water jug shifts on stone, and then a low hum. Cleopatra's final secret. You almost missed it. A servant in the next room playing an instrument. A single string, like a desert wind caught in a bottle. The sound vibrates the air, just barely. What is that? You whisper. Sleep chord, she says. They play it until I pass into the other world. It sounds like loneliness, so my dreams don't startle me. You lie still and let the notes stretch over you, slow and trembling. It's not pretty, not melodic, but it works. Your thoughts slow, your jaw unclenches, your eyes begin to sting with sleep. She speaks one last time, voice barely audible. Tell me tomorrow if the stone worked. And then, quiet. Not the usual modern quiet, filled with fridge hums and car alarms. This is ancient quiet, the kind that presses gently on your chest and tugs at your eyelids. Sleep creeps in like a servant with bare feet. You drift, not just into rest, but into a world where lions teach and mirrors lie and queens become more than mortal. You wake before she does. Not to the blare of an alarm, not to a phone vibrating itself off the nightstand, but to a soft, hollow sound, like someone stirring a wooden ladle in a clay bowl. Cleopatra lies still, her face turned toward the lattice window, lit with the first blush of the Egyptian dawn. You stretch quietly, the mat beneath you warm from your body heat, the air cool and scented faintly of last night's lotus. Then you see it. A girl, perhaps 12 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor, grinding something in a small stone mortar. Her movements are rhythmic, meditative. The contents look like dried myrrh and hibiscus petals, but you're no ancient pharmacist. Cleopatra stirs, her eyes fluttering open. There's no grogginess in her gaze, just a slow, regal return to awareness, as though sleep is merely another realm she rules. She blinks once. Did you dream? You think for a moment. Maybe? Something about a lion? And a mirror? But like fog lifting from the Nile, it's all gone now. She sits up, stretches with a soft sigh, and then begins the most unexpected part of the routine. Gratitude practice. Yes, you heard that right. The Queen of Egypt journals. Every day she begins by whispering her 3 blessings to the ceiling. You listen as she murmurs them. Warm feet, good dreams, that you didn't snore. You smile. She grins back. It's important to start from joy, but she explains, or the day will drag you by the ankles. She gestures for you to try. At first you feel silly, whispering, I like the sleep cord, and the stone felt cool. But as you speak, something clicks into place, a lightness in the chest, a readiness. The girl with the bowl brings the ground mixture to Cleopatra, and you both breathe it in, an herb blend used to awaken the senses. Historians still argue whether this was merely cosmetic or held deeper spiritual purpose. Cleopatra doesn't debate. She just inhales deeply, eyes closed, and says, "Now the world can see me again." And that's when it happens. A sudden gust of wind rustles the palm leaves, slapping against the wall with a wet thud. A few drops of water splash in through the open archway. Rain? Cleopatra looks up, face alert. It's coming. You pause. What is? She stands slowly and walks to the edge of the room where a linen curtain conceals a door. With one hand, she pulls it back to reveal a balcony, and there, unbelievably, is the Nile, angry and swollen, its edges clawing at the banks. Flood, she says softly. Early. In ancient Egypt, the flooding of the Nile wasn't disaster, it was divine gift. But when it came too soon, or too late, or too forcefully, people whispered. They said the gods were unsettled, or that a ruler had angered the stars. She doesn't blink. "We'll adjust the irrigation schedules," she says calmly. Then she turns to you. Time to make the day believe in beauty. You follow her back inside, where servants are already preparing her royal armor. Except it's not gold or silk, it's honey. Cleopatra's cleansing routine once a week involves a full-body honey exfoliation. Apparently, it's not just good for the skin, it's also deeply symbolic. Sticky, golden, sweet, difficult to remove, like power. She kneels onto a low stool as one attendant gently brushes warmed honey onto her arms and back. Another follows with papyrus strips to remove it like wax. She doesn't flinch. "Pain is proof of care," she says, lips twitching. "Also, I like the sound." And here's your quirky tidbit for the day. Cleopatra had a method called bee calling. She'd sit near hives and hum at a certain frequency to lure bees close without angering them. No one knows if it actually worked, but she swore the bees whispered secrets. You imagine that for a moment. Cleopatra seated, humming, bees orbiting her like golden satellites. After the honey comes rosewater. Cool, invigorating. A rinse from a clay jug poured slowly, trickling down like summer rain. You wish you could bottle this feeling, clean, clear, tender. She dries with linen and begins her face ritual. Here's the historical fact. Cleopatra didn't wear heavy makeup at night. Instead, she applied fermented almond oil under her eyes and a cooling coal mixture not for appearance, but to ward off eye infections. The Nile's bugs weren't just annoying, they were lethal. This was self-care meets survival. As she lines her eyes with a steady hand, she says, "Eyes are the final lie. They say I'm fine even when I'm drowning." A beat. So I paint them like war banners. It gives me time. You nod. You've done it too. Mascara as a shield, sunglasses as armor, eye drops after a long night pretending you're okay. Then comes the hair. Again. This time it's not about detangling. It's about sending a message. Cleopatra oils her hair until it gleams, then braids it in a specific pattern, a serpent twist, curling from one temple and around to the other, ending in a soft coil at the nape of her neck. "Snakes are not evil," she explains. "They simply do not waste motion." A pause. "Like me." She smiles, amused at her own metaphor. But there's a sadness underneath, a weariness that no amount of honey or rosewater can scrub away. She gestures for you to stand and hands you a cloth soaked in mint oil. "Wipe your face. Today, you are my witness, and a queen must be seen." You do as told. The coolness jolts you, makes your shoulders roll back. Even if you're still in your pajamas, even if you're thousands of years out of place, you feel held. She stands now, resplendent, not in gold, but in confidence. Her hair coiled like strategy, her skin glowing with sleep and silence. Her eyes bold, ringed not in fear, but in kohl and conviction. And just before she steps out, she whispers, "Beauty is how you greet the world when you still remember who you were at night." You pause, holding on to that line. You'll be thinking about it in traffic tomorrow, or during a fight, or when you look in the mirror and forget you're more than what it reflects. A servant opens the door to the day. Light pours in, brilliant, golden, almost violent. Cleopatra does not flinch. She steps into it like it was hers to begin with. The sun sinks low, and the air thickens with the smell of jasmine and burning frankincense. You follow Cleopatra back through the palace halls, the stones cooling beneath your feet as the day unravels into night. The floodwaters of the Nile still pulse somewhere beyond the walls, a reminder of nature's unyielding power, even over queens. Every night, this is the moment when Cleopatra's routine becomes less about beauty and more about peace. She slips into her chambers, where the world softens and expectation fades. You settle beside her as she reaches for a small jar filled with a mysterious ointment. The color is a deep gold, almost glowing in the dim light. "This is my secret," she confides. "A balm made from the resin of the mastic tree and crushed pearls. It soothes the skin and calms the spirit." You dab a little on your wrists and inhale its faintly salty scent. It's soothing and strangely familiar, like the ocean after a storm. Cleopatra smiles knowingly. "The sea was my cradle, after all." You both sit quietly, the night deepening. She begins a soft chant in ancient Egyptian, a lullaby to the stars and the gods who guard the dreams of pharaohs. Her voice is barely above a whisper, yet it resonates with the weight of centuries. Historians still argue whether such chants were purely spiritual or part of an early psychological therapy. You don't care which. You feel the calm settle into your bones, like the river's gentle current carrying you home. Then comes the final step, the dream preparation. Cleopatra places a small amulet under her pillow, an ankh intertwined with lotus flowers. "This keeps nightmares at bay," she says, and invites the dreams that teach. You realize that this ritual is not just about sleeping, it's about healing. Every oil, every stone, every whispered word is a thread in a tapestry woven to mend the mind and spirit. Before you close your eyes, Cleopatra offers one last piece of wisdom. "True beauty," she says softly, "is not in the mirror, nor the gold, nor the rituals. It is in the courage to face the night and still choose to rise." You lay back, the balm cool against your skin, the chant fading into a gentle hum. The floodwaters whisper their ancient song outside, the stars blink patiently, and the night wraps you in its quiet embrace. Since then, you carry a little of Cleopatra's calm with you, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, beauty and peace are within reach. Just a ritual, a breath, a moment away. Then the end. Thank you for being here. If this brought you peace, consider subscribing. Until next time, be kind to yourself.